Greetings. This is my very first video for 2018 YouTube Pagan Facebook Challenge. This year, instead of just coming up with answers to questions for the videos prompts for the challenge for this year, we're asked to think of our own subjects, beginning with the letters of the alphabet. And in January, we're doing letters A and B. So I'm just getting it under the wire here. So I thought it was very appropriate beginning with A. Speaking of getting it in under the wire, I'm going to begin my video with a confession to you. If you've watched my channel, you know that I follow the wheel of the year very closely, and I'm very in tune, try to keep very in tune with the wheel of the year. And how I say, it is Samhain until it is Yule, and it is Yule until it is Imbolc, etc. And I try to have the altars in my home reflect that. I have to confess that I have an altar in this very room. This is my main, the altar. The altar that I have in this room is our main altar in the house. And up until today, January, what is it? 20, I don't know what it is. Um, 25th, January 25th. I have my phone here so I can, because I wanted to talk to you about something I see on my phone. Anyways, January 25th, I had in this room my altar that I showed you on my channel in October for my ancestor altar, my Samhain altar. Yes, in January, I still have that altar in this room. If you watch my channel, you know that I did observe, of course, Yule, and I had other, and you also know that I have other altars in my home. And I'm not sure, I'm trying to think. I was trying to think earlier. I think I have 5 altar spaces right now. At any time, it varies, but most of the time we have 5. And I've shown you them all at one point or another on my channel. So when I say that this altar was still Samhain, the reason for that was that this was the room that was sort of closed off during the holidays. This is where I did, this table is where I did some of my secret projects for gifts, and we stashed some things in this room where, that we didn't want people to see until appropriately at Yule or Christmas. And so this was really enough. So the altar really never got used. It really never got used during the Yule season. And here we are almost up to Imbolc, so we missed that opportunity. Kind of funny. If you've watched my channel, you know that I mentioned a long time ago that I have one of my friends is Christian, very devoutly Christian, and she was a little disturbed by my tarot readings for a long time, and then she got up the courage. She thought, well, I think she heard me do some other readings, and she got up the courage to to have me read her cards after being assured that what she thought was true about tarot really wasn't the case. Some of the fallacies she had were really not true. And the very first card I pulled out, of course, for her reading was the Devil card, and she nearly fell over backwards. Well, this same woman, when she comes to visit here, she lives a distance away from me, so when she comes for any local reason to do anything locally, she usually stays overnight. And this is the room that she sleeps in. I have a little bed here across from where I'm sitting, and this is her room. And usually she's good with the altar. She's gotten used to the room and used to things, and she kind of likes it. But she came in here at when it first was up, and she saw some of the Day of the Dead things that I had up. She really was kind of creeped out by some of the things. She thought they were a little scary, like the dolls, particularly she was a little scared of. And I said, well, not to worry. When she came back, it would be Yule, and it would be changed by then. Something a little more familiar to her. Well, I never got it back. And she came back, and it was still the same altar. So it's just a little bit disturbed. But anyway, the reason I tell you that is you know, we need to give ourselves the permission to fail. We don't have to, we're so hard on ourselves all the time that we have these perfect altars set up all the time. And just because we don't doesn't mean that we're not good pagans. It depends on what our needs are. And my needs at Yule did not include this altar in this room. The needs I had for Yule, you know, worked very different. I had, my Buddha altar was up. I had my, our prosperity altar in the office still going strong, which I showed you that before. My healing altar back in the sunroom, still going strong. The bedroom altar, which used to be my ancestor altar, which I showed you videos of that, is pretty much chilling. It's chilling out right now. I have young kittens, young cats who are in that room all the time. So I just have the bare bones on that altar. I have some statuaries. I have some, you know, candles, things like that, holding place, holding the place. But I really don't do any working things in that room, any ritual, any working spells or anything in that room that they could disturb. Because if you also look at my videos, I talk about when you're going to set up an altar, think about what you're going to use it for. And that will have something to do with where you want to put it. If you want it to be used for spell work, you want it to be somewhere out of the way where people cannot disturb it. Where people cannot disturb it, where animals cannot disturb it. Right? You want it in a private place or somewhere not in the, where traffic is going to go past it all the time. People are going to be knocking into it or people are going to be messing with it. That's the worst thing in the world. If somebody starts messing with your altar space. Okay? It's a little different when you have prayers lit for prayer, candles lit for prayers, like my healing altar. People seem to understand candles and incense and stuff, and that sort of tells them, you know, hands off. This is because it reminds them maybe of something they've seen in church. Hands off. This is like a special place. This is a holy place. This is something, there's something going on here that it's none of my business. When they see something like, you know, spell work sometimes, they're curious and they can't help it, so they're going to be messing with it perhaps. Cats are no good. Cats are going to jump up and ruin everything you try to do. So, especially young cats. So if you want to do something like that, you want to do it out of the reach of cats. Okay. So now we're in the new year and I'm ready to set up my new altar. And today I just set it up again. I just set up a brand new altar. Right now I'm cleansing the space as well. I've been cleansing with sage and some special incense for the last while. I've got some candles lit and I will show you at the end of this video. I will show you what it is. It's just a bare bones altar space for me. But I wanted to talk to you, I thought this is a great time since we're on the letter A to talk to you about what it, you know, especially some of you who are newer, what do you want to use when you set up an altar? What do you need for an altar? We always say, you know, make it your own. Don't worry about it, make it your own. But unless you have somewhere to start with, that doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people, right? So the reason I have my phone here is I just thought, well, I'm curious, what are they telling you online if you want to set up an altar? What kind of things should you be considering? It's a long time since I've done that, and I have addressed, I do believe, all of these things in previous videos. So if you're interested, please go to some of my other videos. You can pretty much see from the title that they have to do with altars, because I go into a lot of these things in more detail. But I want to say, when we're talking about, just like we're talking about place, we're talking about the number one thing you want to consider when you're setting up your altar space is, what are you using it for? If you only have one altar space, you're using it for a lot of things. You might be using it for ritual, you might be using it for prayer, for healing purposes, you might be using it for spell work. But that does not mean that you have to put everything that you have out on that altar at one time. If you are doing healing spells or prayers, you can have, a place underneath where you can pull your candles, your healing candles, your special incense, your oils, whatever you're using, out and put those up, add those to your altar at that time. Okay? When you're finished, put those away. If you want to do spell work, pull what you need out for the spell, do the spell. When the spell is finished, put those items away. Don't try to keep everything that you have out at one time, because you're really going to, the longer that you do this, the more stuff you're going to accumulate, and the more you want to you're going to get into the point where you really individualize, if that's the right word, everything that you do. Okay, everything that you do. I never set up an altar the same way twice. When I change the altar, I change it. Some things are pretty much standard on each altar, pretty much standard, and that's what I want to talk to you about. But another thing is I add is I need them, right? Okay, so if you're going to have a healing altar, you're going to have candles. You're going to have, things that, probably some special incenses or some special oils, maybe some prayers ready to go out, maybe some things. Like in mine, the healing altar that I showed you that I have in the sunroom, I do a lot of prayer work for both people and pets. So I have a couple different areas, candles going at once. And I have an offering bowl. Since it's mainly was set up for pets, I have an offering bowl, and most of my altars do have an offering that if I'm asking for something, I'm going to give something as well. And on that altar, I have an offering bowl that the pets, my animals, have made offerings. I have feather from my chickens. I have cat claw from the cats. I have a baby tooth from my dog, my young dog. Didn't pull it. When it fell out prematurely, I saved the tooth, and that's in the bowl. Okay, so that's an offering that stays on there. So as we're asking, we're giving back at the same time. On this altar in here, I'm not offering anything right now, but I have an offering. I have my plate and my chalice ready, because anytime we do any kind of work, like if we do ritual or we do anything like that, where we would have use anything in the plate, we often have something like we might do, if, like for instance, if we do cakes and ale and during the ritual, that plate which we're serving the cake on and the chalice which we receive the wine in become offerings, because we always leave a little bit after we share with each other. We then return some of that to the spirits. We take outside and dump some into the ground. Give back. Okay, so so most of my altars would have some kind of an offering, something like that. But anyway, if you're going to have a prosperity altar, you're going to have some money. You got to have money on there. You grow money. I showed you my prosperity altar a while ago. It's still the same. I haven't done too much things differently to it. I think it's still much the same. And we're talking about money. We're talking about prosperity, things that are growing. We're going to grow more. So anything, or flow. We want the flow of money. So I have that's where I put the water, my little water feature on there. Some of the things I'm keep looking, because I have a smudged one burning in the cauldron over here, and I want to make sure it's still going. Anyway, so we would have those kind of things on a prosperity altar that I don't necessarily have to have on this main altar. Okay, but what if I'm going to just talk about setting up a main altar that is just the bare bones of an altar, that later you're going to come in and you're going to try to change it. You can always add to it and take away, right? Like if you're doing spells, like if you're doing prayers, whatever. Add, take away, add, take away. But what is it going to be like the rest of the time? Well, of course, that's, always still a matter of preference. But generally, you will find certain things. Generally, you will find some kind of a altar cloth on the altar. For me, that defines the space, that defines the space between this is just a table or the top of a cupboard, between this and it's now an altar. Because I put a very special cloth. And for me, on this altar, I change usually between the light and the dark of the year. Light and the dark half of the year. And it's still the dark half of the year, so I still have the same cloth that I had on there for Samhain. And I will show you again. I'll show you at the end. So I did not change anything about the cloth. Okay. We always have candles. And again, candles is a choice. All kinds of things. I generally always, which I did not at Samhain, I don't think. I can't even remember now what I had. But most of the year, for most of the time in this room, I have 3 candles on my altar. I have a candle that represents God, the God. I have a candle that represents the goddess. And I have a what I call a working candle, a candle in the center, which for me, anytime I do anything in that altar, the first thing I do is light that working candle, and then other candles are lit from that. Incense is lit from that flame. So it's the first thing lit, and it is the last thing that I extinguish. After I extinguish, when I'm finished, that candle comes last. It's all kinds of different things though, okay? First of all, that candle can be all kinds of things. Right now I have, and I'll show you, I just have a container with a small votive in there. But usually it is something that looks like this. Either a white candle, usually a white candle, or a black candle. It's usually this size. I do all different things with it. It's not always this size, but it usually is this size. I very often, when I take it into service, I inscribe on the candle up and down, and then I will put oil, special oil on there. This candle obviously is not in service now, so I take it out, but when I put it back in, I can use it again. It has already been inscribed because it was briefly in there before, but I will redress it before I go to use it again. It stays in my cupboard. When I go to reuse it again, I will take it out. I will smudge it. To cleanse it. And then I will redress it with some special oil. And then I will take it back into service. Okay. Till it's pretty small that I can't use it anymore. Okay. So it's usually this. But like I said, right now I have a small votive candle. That just worked on my altar for now, and I'll show you why later. Okay. The God and the Goddess candle, I use all different kinds of things for that. All right. I want to say, sometimes this is on a plate. You've seen this in the past that I put it in a dish. I use rose quartz crystals sometimes around it with, I had rose quartz crystals around it with rose petals a lot of the year. I do that. I had a special altar for Bridget altar, who is the triple goddess, and my friend made this candle ring for me, and I would put this candle inside, and then I would put candles around for the triple goddess. Like I said, the candles that I have now representing the God and the Goddess are still the ones that I use to sell. They're still the black candles. I'm still using black. Again, I find that appropriate for this time of the year. I don't have statuary on this altar, but often I have in the past had statuary, and I will again. It's just like right now I don't like I said, I don't always do the same thing. Okay. Sometimes these are fun. I've used these a lot. I was using these on another space at Yule. But these are special candle holders for the God and the Goddess, which you might have seen these, but they're turned. This is the Holly King and the Oak King. On one side is the Holly King and one side is the Oak King. It's a resin. They're very beautifully carved candles. And then on this one is the Goddess and the three. And we have the three faces of the Goddess. We have the maiden, the mother, and the crone. And I really love these a lot. And I use these a lot. You see, these are equal candles on an altar. This is really good. And I would use matching candles sometimes. Sometimes I use a different color for the God and a different color for the Goddess. Sometimes I use white. And if you will recall, in my prosperity altar, because I wanted the balance, I really wanted the balance in there, I have a black candle and a white candle. Instead of a God and Goddess, I have the black and the white. Okay. The only other candles that I would ever use, I would add, I have direction candles representing the elements. Okay, and there's a yellow and a red and a green and a blue. They're still in the other room. But these are something that they don't stay out all the time. If I'm going to do a ritual, I will bring these out usually, because when I cast a circle, I usually call them energies, the elements. I I do a little bit more. But when I just have my, just when I just have the altar dressed for everyday purposes, I don't use these kind of things. But they're always close by if I need them. Okay, so what else are you going to do with your altar? Some things that I use all the time, I have a paten on that altar, which you'll see it has a pentagram on it. If I'm going to do any kind of spell work or any kind of do any kind of whatever, I do it on there. But if I don't have a paten, I will use a tile. You've seen that on my other altar. I use the tile, just a plain tile that I do for spells. I will put candles and things on directly on the tile. This one is a special one that I use, yes, for the Dia de los Muertos. When I do the Day of the Dead stuff or anything like that at that time of the year, I will use this one. I have other ones. I have another big one that is all about harvest. So maybe during the harvest season, I will use the big, instead of the paten, I will take that off and use the, or I'll just stand the paten up and behind me, and I'll use that tile to do spell work on or whatever kind of workings. Something else I always have on my altar is, in this room, I have, excuse me, I'm losing my place here. I want to make sure that I tell you everything I need. These are Boji stones, by the way. Boji stones, I got these a long time ago when I went, you might have known, years ago, I went to Quartzsite with the Moon Mother and got a lot of crystals and things, and I got those then at that time, and I've kept them on my altar in here since then. Years. That's been years ago. One of these is a male, and one of these is a female, supposedly. And they have a lot of healing energy. These are used a lot of the time when you're doing healing work for the chakras and stuff. But it represents the balance of the male and female. And of course, since we are a two-witch family, we have a male and a female witch living here. This altar, we need not only the represented the energies from the god and the goddess in this room. Whatever we do, we need the represented to balance the energies of the female and the male witch in our home. So these are really important on our altar. And that's just a personal thing for us. I do all the time. I do another thing. Let's see what else I have there. You've seen in the past that I have I usually keep an hourglass on my altar, because whenever we do a ritual, I turn the hourglass, and it also reminds me of the changing of the seasons. I have a wheel of the year represented in the back too that you've seen a million times. I've showed you. And I always have some kind of incense and loose incense, and since I use loose incense here, I burn on a charcoal disc. I have something that has sand in it, something that I put the disc in. In here it's a cauldron. Other times on another altar it's a big shell. It just depends on what. I have an Aphame salt always on the altar, always. Anyway, you'll see that in a while. The other things that I put on there, you see this guy a lot. I took him off right now to show you. But this is a clay flute. It's actually a flute. I think technically it's an ocarina. I don't know if I can see. It's a little, can you see that? It's a little face in clay. My friend made this, does reproduction pottery. I don't know if I can get it to play. Anyway, it's just a fun piece. It's there to remind me. It's a personal thing for my husband and I that remind us of to remind us of something. It's a personal thing for us, but it's usually, you see that a lot on my altar, and I know people have asked me in the past what it is. And it's just a fun little piece, you know, always adding things that are special for you. That's what's important. You know, following the book is good, but you get to a point where you need to personalize it, right? You need to personalize it. And if it means something to you, it's important, okay? Another thing is extra items on the, okay, this is, let's see, a wand. I don't have a wand here usually, but I do bring out wands at certain times of the year, which you'll see in the future, I believe. Stones and crystals I have everywhere, yes. I have all kinds of stones. Here's a tiger's eye. And on this table I have a, you know, just a quartz. But I charge my crystals on the altar. Now that I'm starting a new altar, I'm going to bring out some more stones and charge. If I want any kind of energy, specific energies in here for a purpose, I will use different, I'll change out the crystals. But they're always around. I don't keep all my crystals on the altar. That would be kind of silly. Tarot cards. If I get a new deck of cards, or if I think my deck is, for some reason, needs to be cleansed, I will put that on the altar. Right now, also on the altar, I will tell you, you'll see when I come back, I have my bracelets, you know, my bag of bracelets that I wear all the time. They're getting cleansed on the altar, with the altars getting cleansed. I have my little dish of little sage bundles that I've showed you in the past that I keep on them all the time. So I have one ready to go. It's ready to go anytime I need one. I pull it from the dish. And then I have also on that altar my corn dolly that we made back in, oh, I don't know, it was probably made in Mabon. I'd have to look that up. It was probably made at Mabon, but we kept it, and when at Imbolc, we're going to burn it. At Imbolc is when we burn in our family our Yule wreath, and we're going to burn the corn dolly, and then those ashes are going to be put back into the ground. That's like a Celtic tradition that we use. Anything else that I want to you know, you want to add, you can add. You know, that's just it's a very personal thing. One thing I want to say, where do you put an altar other than that? I had some other people ask me some questions. Does it matter where you put it? It doesn't matter. Some people think you should try to face north. And this is a compass, which I have all the time. And north is, I'm kind of looking north, and the altar is kind of facing north. We're just a little bit that way, just a little bit that way. There's north. Right there's north. And so we're as close as we can be. We're as close as we can be to north. But you know, it doesn't matter. It's more important that you have an altar than it is if you have it facing the proper direction. Right? It's just more important. What is the most thing important to your altar is that it represents you. It represents your spiritual practice, what you feel is important. That's all. That's all. You know, I think it'd be hard pressed to find an altar that didn't have candles on it. But you know, they don't have to be candles that you light. If you're in a place where you can have flame, you know, there's the little battery candles. They're wonderful candles that you've seen me. I've showed those before in the past. We use them at Samhain all the time when we keep them on all night. I use them a lot of times for different things. They come in different sizes. There's also big pillar candles this size, which I use all the time in my pavilion when I'm camping. So I don't have flame inside my can that has a battery, and they flicker, and they're just as nice. They still serve the purpose. Yes, nothing serves quite the purpose as a live flame. But that's just a romantic notion that a lot of us have. Some of us, it's not appropriate to even try to have a live flame. You don't have to do that. Don't get worried about things like that. You know? Try not to be worried about things like that. I think it's important that you try to represent the elements as much as you can on your altar, especially if you're going to be doing spell work, because and the god and the goddess as well, if that's your belief system, because Remember, when anytime we're going to do magic, we're asking them to help us, assist us in our magic. We call upon the god and the goddess. We call upon the power of the elements of the earth, of the fire, of air, of water, to assist us in our workings. So to have some kind of representation is important. But you know, most of the things that you would have on there, like a chalice, represents water. If you use a shell that you keep your sand in, that can represent water. If you use, you know, you could just have a seashell, that represents water. Air can be a lot of things. It can be your incense. It can be your, you know, you can use feathers. You can use, it could be a lot of different things. You can use your earth. Could be your if you have a pentacle or a pentagram represented on your altar, or your paten, or a sand, the sand, or the salt in a little dish. I always keep salt in there. That represents a representative of earth. Of course, your fire, your flame, and for your candles. But again, you know, it doesn't have to be as fancy as you think. It's very exciting. I encourage you, do not wait. If you are in the closet, you can still do something on the top of a dresser or something that people wouldn't even realize, you know, what they're looking at if they were looking at it. I think a lot of people have done some really good videos on those kind of things, and that you can look up and get some ideas from. But there's nothing more exciting than when you go. I felt so good today when I finally got that. I finally got that altar taken down and cleansed, the area cleansed, and the new thing, even though as simple as it is, it was fantastic to do. It was just so much fun to do. You know, it's so fun. Okay, I'm just going to really very quickly turn the camera around and just let you see what I did, and that's all. And then I'll be done. Okay, so I'll be right back. Okay, is it just a quick, as you can see, it's very, very simple, isn't it? I still have the dark cloth, the black and gold cloth on the altar, you can see. And I still have the same black candles that I'm using to represent the god and the goddess. There's my wheel behind on the wall that's there all the time. You can see in the center there's my paten. Of course, I changed out the flowers. Oh, I'd love to say about the flowers, you know, Oprah Winfrey nearly ruined it for me. For a long time, you know, I watched her one time say how much she detested artificial flowers and how bad they were, and I agreed, and there's nothing better than fresh flowers. Until I'm like trying to set up my altar space, and then I said, you know what, it's ridiculous trying to keep, you know, fresh flowers on your altar, especially when, you know, you might just not have the proper life for them or whatever. They just don't last. Well, this is where the dollar store comes in really handy. These flowers that I get are at the dollar store. And I found they just look fine. They look absolutely fine. Because it's the representative, what they represent. I wouldn't use them on my dinner table, but they're fine here on an altar. I find a secret, I'll give you a secret, is as you can see, I varied. I hope you can see. I have white roses. I have some petunias. There's supposed to be petunias, like really pale yellows and some whites and some white baby's breath, and then some really pale pink cherry blossoms in there. And so I have different kinds of shapes and textures and shades. As we get closer to true spring, I will add some darker shades of pink to them. I'll perk it up a little bit that way. But I thought it was really nice with a nice contrast with the black. And you can't tell, but this wall behind is yellow. It looks kind of pink right now, but it's really a yellow wall, so it kind of looks pretty. But anyway, you can see that there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not going to apologize for that at all. There in the center, I have my container holding my working candle. I like the gold container I brought out from my Buddha altar I had at Yule. For right now, I like the glistening of the gold with the black. And again, I've elevated it up on a candle holder. You can see here on the left, I have my plate, my chalice, my aphame. There's my corn dolly waiting to go in the fire at Imbolc, and my hourglass. On this side, we have my incense, my cauldron. I was burning my incense in it, and I was burning my smudge in there, and there's my little white sack that holds my bracelets. What's left to go on there, I will be putting, I will cut here and put it on. Okay, I put my ocarina back up on top of the hourglass, as you can see, and I added my my stones to the altar there beside in front of the flowers. So I have my female male and energy back. I'm just looking to see, excuse me, I'm just looking to make sure I don't have anything else that I want to put. Anyway, I don't know if you can see the bojis. They're really small, but they're in between the working candle and the green dish to hold the incense. Anyway, not that important, but you see it's bare bones. And I have lots of room. If I want to do some spell work, I can do it there on my paten in the front because it is made of clay. And I can very easily put candles or whatever on there. Okay, anyway, that's it. Thank you so much for watching me. I am the good wife, Rebecca, and I wish you blessings. Thanks for watching.